Hello world, it's Wednesday, August 26, 2026, and here's what happened this week in PHP internals. 10 stories this week, so let's get into it. But first, you shipped a lot of code this quarter, but do you know how much of it is actually still there? Ballast reads your Git history, never your code, and scores what survives. Stable velocity plus a durability rating between 300 and 850, like a credit score for your code base. Updated every month, and it's free. Ballast.now. This week's top story isn't really about PHP directly. It's about how the internals list talks to itself. Messages have been arriving that were clearly written or heavily assisted by large language models, that flat, over-professional register that thanks you warmly, then restates your own point back at you. And somebody finally said the quiet part in plain text. 24 messages followed about where the line actually sits. Nobody argued against translation. English is a second or third language for a good part of that list, and that's a real accessibility question rather than a laziness one. What people object to is authorship. The argument itself being handed to a machine, and the harder problem underneath is there's no reliable way to tell the difference from the outside. Nothing's been written down yet, but if you want to say in what does get written down, the community Discord is at phpc.chat, and there is an internals channel there. It's a community server, not an official PHP one, but there's a thread in there working on exactly these guidelines. So if you want to head there and argue with us about what should be in the guidelines, feel free to join the discussion. A new RFC opened on Saturday from the same contributor whose last one had just been withdrawn. Sepehr Mahmoudi proposed array match, which filters an array down to the values containing a substring implemented in C, so you don't have to pay for a closure on every element. Yuya Hamada replied within the hour asking whether array filter isn't already enough, pointing at a GitHub search full of userland functions already named array match that don't all behave alike, and noting that the string I contains RFC was declined, so an ASCII-only case-insensitive flag is a hard sell. Tim Dusterhuis pointed out that in 8.6 this is already one line because partial function application lets you drop string contains into array filter with a placeholder. Christian Schneider noted that preg-grep has done basically the same job for years. The case against it was mostly one case made 5 different ways. Ayesh Karunaratne went after the premise, writing, "I have worked on Drupal, WordPress, Silex, and bespoke codebases, spending enough time profiling them. An array string search has never been a bottleneck." Larry Garfield called it an XY problem and said huge in-memory arrays are a code smell to begin with. Micmac USA offered the alternative nobody else had. Make string contains polymorphic the way string replace already takes an array. Sepehr has since dropped the case-insensitive flag, renamed it array string contain, and moved the target to 8.7 since 8.6 is frozen. Nobody has argued in favor of it. The proposal so far contains no support. Nick Stoddard brought a documentation question to the list on Thursday. He's restructuring PHP's internals book, the docs that live inside PHP source, and his first pull request converts the pages from restructured text to Markdown, a light 1100-line mechanical diff that nets out 86 lines shorter. Ilya Tovilo, who set the book up, called it churn and answered that the source is neither pure Markdown nor restructured text, but myst. So renaming files fixes some rendering and breaks the restructured text-flavored parts. His real objection was the diagnosis. He wrote, "None of this is wrong, but I don't think the docs have stalled because the syntax is too hard. Rather, more time should be designated to them." Wayland Dew and Calvin Buckley both said the effort belongs in the content. Nick's clarification explains the thread, though. The old docs folder he's merging in is already Markdown, so a conversion happens in one direction or the other. It's still open. Robert Chapin spent the week working through an old RFC, Deprecate Fuzzy Typecasts by Alexandre Daubois and Nicolas Grekas, dates to January and is still under discussion, and still targets 8.6 on the wiki, which Robert would like changed given that there's been no discussion since. His objection is that the RFC's own migration guidance doesn't hold up. He points out that with the string 1.5, is numeric returns true, so the validate before casting example still triggers the deprecation, while is int and is float return false for every numeric string. He says the filter var alternative doesn't guarantee an integer back either. He asked, are developers expected to replace the single typecast with 8 lines of code for PHP 8.6? Nobody's answered him so far. A process question opened yesterday morning. Sepehr Mahmoudi noticed that some RFCs proposing new functions include a userland polyfill and some don't, and asked whether the RFC template should recommend one, whether that's feasible. His reasons are that a polyfill pins down the exact behavior, edge cases and all, without anyone reading the C, and that it gives teams like Symfony's polyfill maintainers an accurate head start. Larry Garfield called recommended where relevant but not required a reasonable policy and added a second use for it, saying it would also give us a target to benchmark against to see if putting it in C really has a performance benefit, which is exactly what 2 people spent the weekend asking Sepehr for on his other proposal. Gina P. Banyard posted a correction on Friday to an already accepted RFC. Stephen Wilton's SNMP improvements proposal states that its target is the next stable release for all currently supported PHP versions. Gina's point is that this runs against the release process policy on patch versions, so the changes will land in 8.6 only. She asked for a design change. The new integer constants in the output control section would become PHP enums instead, which improves type safety in userland and translates the C enums SNMP already defines into PHP ones. The plan is to have it merged in time for 8.6.0 Beta 2. Wayland Du, who maintains the internationalization extension, spent part of the week handing out work. He'd like some of the extension's constants turned into enums, proper namespaces on its classes so they stop colliding, and the remaining gaps between PHP's API and the underlying ICU APIs filled in. He was blunt about the error handling, writing, the error state stuff in the extension is, frankly, bad, in my opinion, and could be optimized since it has caused a lot of very stupid bugs. He suggested the enums and namespaces could be an 8.7 RFC if somebody picks it up. Yuya Hamada added the reason it matters. Feedback from right-to-left languages, from language users, is thin across the whole industry, not just PHP, and PHP's internationalization depends on getting it. Quick hits. Array search range, last week's top story, is officially withdrawn. MicMac USA posted a 7-point review hours after we recorded, and Sepehr Mahmoudi pulled it on Thursday and called it a valuable learning experience. Wayland Du's extension name case sensitivity proposal is going to a vote eventually. A core developer objected, which under policy makes it an RFC, and he'll open that after the 8.6 branch is cut on September 22nd, with both behaviors on the ballot for 8.7. And Zachary Dubois introduced himself on Thursday, asked whether adding missing libsodium functions needs an RFC or just a pull request, was told to open the pull request and had it up by Sunday. It adds X-Wing and MLChem 768 bindings to the sodium extension. Post-quantum key encapsulation arriving as somebody's first pull request. Quantum resistant and so far review resistant. So that's the week. No RFC in the voting phase for the second week running. A long argument about who's actually writing the mail on the internals list. A new array string contain proposal with 5 people against it and nobody for it. A documentation pull request that turned out to be a consolidation question rather than a format preference. Unanswered holes in the fuzzy cast migration path. And post-quantum crypto arriving as somebody's first pull request. Links to every thread are below. If you found this interesting, a like or a comment helps more people find it. Subscribe with the bell if you want to see these the moment they're posted each week. And if you missed last week's episode, that's a good one to watch next. The PHP Foundation bankrolls a lot of PHP source development, so if you use the language, maybe consider donating at opencollective.com/PHP Foundation, or try guilting your employer into it. Thanks to Ballast.now for supporting this week's episode. We're Artisan Build. See you next week.